Hello everyone. Today I wanted to continue our discussion on proof of stake. So last time we were discussing the idea of proof of stake. So just a quick recap of that. So we said that proof of work consumes a huge amount of energy. It has a lot of good properties. It was the first consensus protocol proposed for permissionless blockchains. Quite an ingenious idea by Satoshi Nakamoto. But the problem is it consumes so much of energy. So people said, is there something else we can use? And the idea that came up was that stake, which is how much currency people own on the blockchain, is already agreed upon by everyone. So why not use that to choose some random person to create the next block? And that's what proof of stake tries to achieve. Right? So essentially it says that let's give a chance for somebody to create the next block which is proportional to the amount of cryptocurrency he has. Right? And we said that is done in this way. So you just take the hash of the previous block and also you put your address and a timestamp, and this timestamp can only take a few values, so it's not the equivalent to proof of work where you can put any value for the nonce, right? And if the hash of these three concatenated together is less than the target, then target multiplied by the balance in that account, then that person can create a block, right? So whoever has this private key corresponding to this address can create a block and sign it, okay, and show that in fact this property holds. Okay, so essentially we just write that here. So these are concatenated together, right? So this looks like a very good solution because it proposes a random winner every time. And that's good for us because we don't want any single person to control the consensus for a long amount of time. Okay? But as we saw that it has lots of issues, and one of the problems was nothing at stake. So the problem here was that if a fork occurred, it really doesn't cost anybody to try to mine on both chains. There is no energy expenditure like in proof of work. There is no dedication of hardware to do proof of work, right? So here in proof of work you had to choose between blocks, or it was possible of course to mine on both chains, but you would have to sometimes try to mine here and sometimes here, but you couldn't simultaneously mine on both. But with proof of stake there is this problem, right? And so how do you reach consensus, because people can just keep mining on all the forks that are occurring, right? Also we said it's possible to go very back in time, start from somewhere near the genesis block where somebody has a small amount of stake and keep privately mining a chain right from close to the genesis block and keep collecting the mining fees all along so that the stake of the person keeps increasing. Right? And this was a problem because this person would be able to generate a longer chain than the main chain which was visible to all the honest miners. And probably by the time he releases this chain, the attacker would have close to 100% of the stake because he's been the only one mining over here. Right? So to do this sort of an attack with proof of work is very tricky because you would have to actually have to expend as much energy pretty much as was expended to create this original chain, right? Whereas here you just do it with expending zero energy, right? Then there were other issues like initial distribution, which is more a psychological issue, that if you have certain stake, your chances of winning are proportional to your stake. So people will sort of become misers. They will not want to spend their cryptocurrency, right? So that they just use their stake just for mining. It's sort of like a person who only puts his money in the bank and doesn't spend. He only cares about the interest, right? And so that's sort of an issue which might come up here. Then of course there's a bribe attack where somebody says that announces publicly that he's willing to, he's creating his own private chain which he wants to win, and he tells people that if you mine on my private chain, I am going to offer you some money. I put in a smart contract or something which will automatically give you some money which I have deposited in this chain if you mine on this particular chain. Right? So since it costs people nothing to mine on this chain, they actually join in this bribe attack. Right? So in fact, attacks are not always silent as we might have thought with selfish mining or with double spend attacks. So in fact, there have been attacks where people come out publicly, and say that I am performing an attack. So there was an attack which happened in Ethereum in one of the early years, where there was a mistake in a smart contract, and somebody actually started stealing money from the smart contract. Okay, so the Ethereum people, they actually broke all the rules, and they actually came up with a hard fork. They came up, meaning that they actually created a new chain and discarded that old smart contract. They tried to fix it. Right? So the attacker actually came out publicly. He didn't reveal who he was, but he came out and said, this is not fair. I'm following the rules, and you're trying to change the rules of the game, right? So maybe in a future class we can discuss about that, some details about that particular attack. Right, and then of course there was a pre-computing attack, where the problem here was that you couldn't put information about the transactions in the block header, right? And so it gave some flexibility for somebody to change the transactions here in this particular block, and that gave him some control about whether he had chances to create the next block. Okay, so we saw that because by changing the transactions here, he was able to change this hash value which came in the next block. And so he sort of fixed things, rigged it a little bit, so that not only did he create this block, but he got a chance to create the block which came after that and so. Right, so these were lots of attacks, and let's look at ways of trying to address this in some way today. So today we will look at some solutions for trying to fix the proof of stake defects, and some of these methods are going to try to combine proof of work with proof of stake. So proof of work has a lot of good properties, so can we leverage those properties but maybe not expend as much energy? Okay, so our goals are going to be use proof of work, but don't use too much energy. Okay, and at the same time, let's think about it. So how do we achieve this first goal? Well, there's a couple of methods. So one is you don't use proof of work in every block. So you use it once in every this many blocks, let's say 10 blocks or 20 blocks. But then of course you have to decide on the other blocks, right? How do you reach consensus in the other blocks, and there maybe we could use proof of stake, right? But then every time you don't use proof of work, then it opens you up to attacks, which are possible in proof of stake. Okay, so we'll have to look at that, how to address those, right? And okay, so we use proof of work, but we use it in a less manner in some way, and so we use proof of stake also for consensus. Okay, so the more energy used in proof of work, the stronger the proof of work becomes. I mean, it's harder for somebody to break. Right? So Bitcoin uses hundreds of megawatts of power, right? And so it's very hard for a common man to sort of use that much power just in doing proof of work to build an alternative chain. Okay? So how do we do this? Let's think about it. So let's look at a hybrid solution. So let's say that we have blocks being generated, and once in a while we generate a block with proof of work. So let's say that we have n-1 blocks here, and here we use proof of stake. So how is this going to help? So let's say n could be, let's say 10, so every 10th block is generated with proof of work. So everybody knows which block has to be created with proof of work, right? And everybody knows which block has to be created by proof of stake, because clearly the blocks are numbered. You start from the genesis block, so you can easily count, and everybody knows which block has to be generated with proof, right? So let's say we've reached this block, so from here onwards people know that we have to generate block with proof of stake, right? So they use the same rule of proof of stake in order to generate this, right? So you consider the balances of everybody up to this point and you create this block, right? And you go on, so on, and when you finish n-1 blocks, again you generate it with proof of work. So how does this reduce energy? Well, let's say people have invested in hardware for proof of work. Okay, so what they are going to do is they are going to switch off that hardware for this period of time. Okay, so this takes some amount of time. So suppose if a Bitcoin blocks, you would have n-1 times 10 minutes, right, between these blocks, and during that time nobody is doing proof of work. They are all silent. But whenever this n-1 block is created, everybody switches on their proof of work hardware, and they try to mine on this block to create this next one. So that's the idea, that we reduce energy consumption. So how much energy have we reduced it by? So I mean, that's something a little bit tricky, and it depends on how much mining fees that you're giving. Okay, so like in a full proof of work chain, let's say that mining fees per block, let's say, was some M, and time between blocks, let's say average time between blocks was, let's say, T. Okay, so, and okay, so we are assuming, let's say, that the price of the cryptocurrency, let's say, is fixed, and let's say M is equivalently in dollars, right? So now the energy consumed, you would expect, is going to be less than this. So POW energy, let's say per unit time, you would expect that to be less than M over T. Let's say this is in dollars. Okay, and of course, if M is given in terms of cryptocurrency, you'd have to multiply by the conversion rate to get it in dollars. Okay. So this is what you would expect in regular proof of work. And here, let's say that in this solution, So this is in full proof of work, but in this solution, suppose we give the same mining fees per block. So we are giving M currency units to whoever mines a block. Now we are expending energy, and I mean obviously this energy should be less than the amount you're earning, otherwise you're losing money, right? So we would expect that the POW energy should be less than the amount earned for actually putting in that effort. And now we are getting M units of currency, but now every N times T. Okay, because so I'm assuming that the time between blocks is T. Okay, so roughly you would expect, let's say, the energy to spend to be reduced by a factor of N. Okay. Of course, we are assuming that the currency value is the same in both cases and so on, for whatever reason. Okay, so you would expect that we are saving a lot of money over here, saving a lot of energy, right? So it's just these bursts of time, sort of whenever a POW block has to be generated, everybody switches on their mining hardware. Okay, so that might affect, of course, the power companies and so on, that suddenly let's say every few hours, there's an increase in energy consumption and then it just disappears, right? So power companies want a steady energy consumption, right? Otherwise it affects their own generation and distribution system. Okay. But anyway, that's of course not part of the blockchain, but overall we are decreasing the energy consumed. Okay, and so how we achieve consensus in these intermediate blocks is by proof of stake. So let's think, do we solve any of the issues of proof of stake? So let's think about it. So what about nothing at stake problem? So let's see if this method actually helps in solving the nothing at stake problem. So we have a blockchain like this, and let's say that this is created by proof of work, and these are blocks created with proof of stake, and let's say there happens to be a fork over here, and because of the nothing at stake problem, these forks, I mean both branches keep getting extended, let's say indefinitely, right? People keep creating, it might get even worse, maybe there is something like this happening here, right? And let's say at this point in time, now we have to create a proof of work block. Okay, so now what are we going to do? So now everybody switches on proof of work, they keep mining, and let's say that this particular chain gets a block first, this particular branch of the blockchain, and somebody creates a proof of work block here, right? And nothing at stake problem sort of couldn't continue over here because there was no proof of stake anymore, right? And because of this, okay, everybody switched over here, this block was created, and proof of stake started again. Okay, so I mean there are more complicated situations we could study, that what if there was two proof of work blocks generated at roughly the same time, right? A fork occurred in the proof of work part of the chain, right? That would make it a little bit more complicated. But let's say that only a single block was created over here, and because of that, what happened was that this particular nothing at stake problem got terminated over here. Okay? So the nothing at stake problem can occur, but only in the proof of stake part of the chain, only in these short segments. Okay, so these sorts of forks get resolved every time a proof of work block is created. Okay, so we have short term nothing at stake, but it's not infinitely long. So let's say short term nothing at stake problem, which can last let's say n minus 1 blocks. So if indeed this occurs over here, there's confusion because people don't know which chain is going to win. So they would have to sort of wait for some time till the forks are resolved, and maybe then they sort of accept payments from these different blocks and so on. Right? So for example, in this particular situation, let's say that this block resolved the forks, so everybody accepted all the transactions which were there in these particular blocks which I marked. Okay. So of course, I haven't mentioned right now how do you decide what is the chain to follow, but effectively in this situation you would look at the longest chain, right? So let me just write that down over here, or actually over here. Let's say that the rule to be followed is to extend, that is, if you are an honest miner, extend the longest chain. Okay, and of course I am skipping over how much energy is consumed in different chains and so on. So in different blocks, because as you might expect that as there is more and more mining power coming in, you would have to change the target threshold, right? But let's for the moment assume that there is the same amount of power consumed to generate each of these blocks. So effectively what we do is we look at the longest chain and mine on that, or try to extend it either with proof of stake or by proof of work, as the case is. Okay, so that's about nothing at stake. What about let's say the long range attack? So remember that the long range attack was going far back, somewhere close to the Genesis block, and it was trying to fork the chain from that in private. So let's say that this is a proof of work block and this is a proof of work block and so on, right? So what the attacker wants to do now is he wants to go back here and he wants to create a chain which is longer than this one, which has been publicly declared. So this is his private chain. So how did the earlier long range attack work when we had only proof of stake? Well, that person had a little bit of stake here, so he started creating blocks with that. So he had to put in timestamps which were, let's say, quite far apart here. Okay, and then he's creating these blocks, and then he generates a private chain which is longer than this, and by the end of this time he has most of the stake because he's got all the mining rewards here. So can he do a similar thing over here? So let's say he starts with whatever stake he has here, but he has to actually use proof of work over here to generate this block. Okay. So it's non-trivial. He will have to generate proof of stake here. He'll have to generate proof of stake somewhere else and so on, right? He has to keep generating proof of stake over here. And that is non-trivial to do because he actually has to expend energy. Even if he gets more and more mining rewards here, he still has to expend as much energy here as was expended in these blocks. Okay. So even if he's able to rush through these blocks and generate them very quickly using some particular method that he has, maybe because he's getting more and more stake and so on in the chain, he will still have to generate these blocks, which makes it non-trivial for him to perform this attack. Okay. So this is non-trivial to generate. Which makes this attack harder to do. But of course, the amount of energy that he has to consume here is going to be less than if the entire chain was proof of work. Okay, because for these blocks, he doesn't have to consume any energy. So he doesn't expend any energy over here. Only once in a while, he has to switch on his hardware and he has to actually perform proof of work over here. Okay. So if he's able to generate these quickly, then of course it's good for him. He doesn't have to keep his proof of work hardware off for that much time, right? He can keep it on and sort of very quickly generate these and jump to the next proof of work block and so on, right? But of course he still has to expend as much energy as was expended in this main chain over here. Okay, and so there's just no way around it because you can't fake your proof of work energy. Okay. So these proof of work blocks in between are going to make this long range attack much harder to do than in a pure proof of stake chain. But of course the attack would still be easier than on a pure proof of work chain. Okay. And we might think, what about other issues like pre-computing attack and so on, right? So what about the pre-computing attack? So recall what the pre-computing attack was. So we said that somebody, let's say, created this particular block and connected to this block were the transactions. And the issue was that you didn't put the Merkle root of the transactions in the block header here. It was not, or even if you put it in the block header, it was not part of the proof of stake problem which you had to solve. Right? So we said you had to do hash of the previous block, let's say the block header. You concatenated your address and there was a timestamp, and that had to be less than the balance times a target. Okay, so if somebody was actually got the opportunity to create a particular block, okay, everything was satisfied, he still could tweak the transactions that he was going to decide to put into the block, right? And what he could do is, for the next block, okay, so this previous block header, let's say this is the hash of the previous block header, not previous block header. So this is the hash of that. So he could affect the next solution which had to be solved, right? So he tweaked the transactions here and affected the hash value, and effectively he converted the proof of stake for the subsequent block into something like a proof of work solution, because he could tweak the transactions here and affect the hash value which had to be solved which had to be put into the proof of stake problem in order to generate the next block. Okay, so you can look at the previous lecture if you want more details about this. But can this sort of an attack be performed here? Okay, so you want to tweak the transactions in an earlier block in order to give yourself a higher chance of creating the subsequent blocks and so on. Okay? And of course, now there is some restrictions, because here, let's say this was a proof of work block. So you could perform a pre-computing attack for all of these proof of stake blocks. But that would face a roadblock when the next proof of work block had to be created. So you could sort of monopolize the situation here. The person creating this block will tweak the transaction so that he wins the next block also, right? With whatever addresses he has, he just tweaks the transactions here so that he wins the next game, and then he tweaks the transactions here in this block so that he creates the next one and so on. But all of that stops over here because he cannot use the same trick in order to create the next subsequent proof of work block. He would actually have to do proof of work here in order to create it. Right? So this attack could continue for as long as proof of stake continues, but then it gets terminated. So a short-term pre-computing attack is possible. Okay, and you can look at, I leave it as an exercise if you want to think about the bribe attack. So would a bribe attack work over here, or what would the restrictions be? And what about the initial distribution problem? So the initial distribution problem comes into the picture because the chances of your creating a block are proportional to your stake. So you may not want to spend any money because that would reduce your stake, right? So of course, here things are a little bit different because people are getting mining fees in the proof of work blocks too, right? And that changes things a little bit. I mean, this initial distribution problem is still there to some extent, that still your chances of creating a block are proportional to your, at least for these proof of stake blocks, are proportional to the stake that you have. Right? But of course, what we could do is we could give more mining fees for proof of work blocks and maybe less for the proof of stake blocks, right? And so maybe that it's not such a big deal that if you actually spend your money that you're actually reducing your chances of earning more money, right? But that becomes a tricky problem, what to set over here. How much mining fee should I give for proof of work blocks? How much mining should I give for proof of stake blocks and so on, right? But anyway, it's the initial distribution problem may not be as severe in this situation than if you had only proof of stake. Okay, but for the details of this, I leave it as an exercise for you to look at the bribe attack and the initial distribution problem. Right? So can we do something beyond this? I mean, are there other hybrid proof of work, proof of stake systems? And indeed, it is possible. And Ethereum is actually thinking about that. So Ethereum 2.0 So Vitalik Buterin has been proposing solutions, and we will look at one of his solutions called Slasher, which came out around 2014, 2015, and he modified it a little bit. And of course, they've taken it a bit further, and now they've come up with something called Casper, okay, which is a little bit more advanced version of this. so they're not completely confident in using just proof of stake, because as we see there are all sorts of issues which come up, and essentially it costs nothing to do proof of stake, right? And you can go back very far back in time and try to perform attacks and so on. But with proof of work, you actually have to expend energy. There's no way of faking it, right? So still Ethereum is not completely confident about getting rid of proof of work completely, but they want to at least reduce the energy consumption a little bit, right? And so we look at Slasher in a subsequent lecture.